From Boca Raton, Florida, Rabbis Efrem Goldberg, Philip Moskowitz, and Josh Broide are taking you behind the Bima. The BRS rabbis schmooze about contemporary issues and talk to special guests who give a behind-the-scenes look at how they got to where they are and what keeps them going. Welcome to Behind the Bima.
Good evening. It is 9 o'clock Wednesday night. I'm Rabbi Efrem Goldberg, and joined by my dear friend and colleague and a proud new dog owner, Rabbi Josh Broide. And we are here to take you
behind the Bima.
We are here to take you behind the Bima on this 28th night of Sira. So we're just to prove to you that it's a live show. I couldn't say 28. I could say, I counted already. Davin Marav, I made the bracha, I counted. I could say 28 on this 28th night of Sira. I counted, legit. It's among the most stressful things of the rabbinate. I'll speak under a chuppah. I'll give a Shabbos Shuva drasha. I'll do every night. Right. Everyone's waiting. And you can't help but get this feeling that a good percentage of the people are waiting to jump on you if you're wrong, if you got the wrong night.
First of all, you have the numbers right in front of you. You don't know if that's last night or that's tonight.
Correct. Right. And then you're like, is that? And then even though you start second guessing yourself. So you look at
maybe
the
they
app
didn't change it.
The alert, and you're like, but did that app just give me the alert for the night, or was that last night? Like, where are we at? Am I right? Am I wrong? We're always so shy.
But I don't think anyone would second guess you. I think like they would assume that you were right and they were wrong. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't question it. I would assume that you did the right thing.
You're a decent person. This should be the most stressful thing in my life. I understand I'm not getting a lot of sympathy right now. I will just tell you, it's like an unnecessary stress. I've tried checking off in the, printing out, like from the OU booklet, check out each, and the app, the remind, like I don't have a good system.
The OU app, I think, is great. I was walking out of shul tonight.
I should just dive in another shul for all Sphira from Marv.
No, the OU email is fantastic because it emails you right when you need it. But someone said,
no, but sometimes I get it precise, and we dive in,
right?
Shkia, Marv. It's a little bit.
And some guy said to me on the way out, he's like, "What if I don't check it at night? Sometimes I need a reminder in the morning, just to stay in the game."
Interesting. I hear that. Want to thank our sponsor for Behind the Bima, second week in a row. Our good friends. I was supposed to have a baby. We are promoting the inaugural Global Jewish Fertility Support Summit. Unfortunately, Rabbi Broide, I'm sure you know people struggling with suffering fertility, secondary infertility. There are people who get married, they have a baby right away, and unfortunately, they're waiting, trying to have more. And there are grandparents who are people waiting to become grandparents. They have children, they're longing, they're wishing, they're waiting. And it's not a simple thing. And this is a great organization. I was supposed to have a baby. The people involved, Amy and others, amazing. And they're putting together this summit on May 7th via Zoom. So privacy, confidentiality, May 7th. Some of the most prominent voices, 15 major fertility organizations worldwide. So whether you're on a fertility journey or a professional, clergy, lay leader in space, or you want to know more sensitive to family and friends, this summit, you can find it iwassupposedtohaveababy.org. All you have to do is iwassupposedtohaveababy.org, and you can find it. Big thank you to the leadership there for sponsoring 2 weeks in a row. And I got to tell you, it's not just the sponsorship. We're promoting it because we know it and it's good, and everyone can learn something and grow from it. So please.
Yeah. And even if you're one of our listeners and you say, well, this is not something which I'm dealing with, but you might have a friend or you might know someone, and just tell them, I never heard about this program. It's a great summit. And
we need a lot more sensitivity in this area because, there are people, they don't mean harm. They don't mean bad, but you meet someone, you say, how many children do you have? Do you have children? Why don't you have children yet? Aren't you married for a few years? Yeah. People say all kinds of things. They don't mean to be hurtful or insensitive. You just kind of be aware, When I meet somebody new, you have this also. They move to the community. You're meeting them. You're schmoozing with them. They ask to meet with you. So I'll say, tell me about your family. Instead of how many children do you have children? Even do you have children?
That's great.
But so I say, tell me about your family. By the way, I can meet someone that turns out they're single. But tell me about your family. My parents live here. My aunt is so-and-so. My grandparents. It's such a great, tell me about your family is a sort of open.
Just for that alone was worth it to tune in Behind the Bima. I never say that. I always say how many children, and I realize that's probably not the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Just for that, look at you. You tuned into Behind the Bima.
Anyway, thanks for joining us tonight. I'll end here. No, just kidding. But yeah,
that's great.
Tell me about your family. Tell me about you. Tell me about your family. Your family can mean so many things depending who you are. So it is a great thing. Really excited for our guest tonight, Kalman Samuels, Rabbi Kalman Samuels. We know him for a long time. If you haven't been to Shalva, you got to check this place out. It is Chesed Disney World. It's like Hask, Simcha, Shalva. It's just magical places of pure neshamas, pure souls, without politics and distractions and things that are unimportant. It's really, really a great place. Excited to have him on. And I learned tonight, actually, that my Machutin's brother, Ari Storch, was the president of Shalva for, I think, 8 years, a long time. So, yeah.
You didn't know that?
No, my Machutin, Rabbi Eli Storch, his brother Ari, was very involved, which is amazing. So yet another reason that we feel connected.
Such a special organization and such a special rabbi that leads it. He's a very, very, very inspiring individual.
So last night we had an amazing program. 500 people came to hear the recent former head of the Mossad, director of the Mossad, Yossi Cohen, really special person. It was a great night. Our dear friend Benjamin Anthony and his wonderful organization, the Miriam Institute. It was a great night. An interview with Yossi Cohen, head of the Mossad. He's been at this. He was recruited at a very young age. He's been at this for, what did he say, 40 years, close to 40 years. And he climbed his way to the top. And I was sitting there listening to him and I'm thinking, to climb your way to the top of the Mossad and having gone through it, you've gone undercover in many countries. You know so many languages. You know how to take on different identities. And you know how to keep secrets from your wife, from your family in life. It's really amazing. And
it's amazing.
People that risk their lives.
Right. I mean, there's some jobs that maybe you could ascend in the corporate ladder, or maybe you don't really know exactly what you're doing, but you find yourself in the right position, the right time. You can't do that here. This is legit. You're the
It's really amazing. You know, the Mossad operates exclusively outside of Israel. You get the Shabak in Israel. Last night we had 2 Shabak agents that you saw. Might have had 4 others that you didn't see who were here protecting him. And Shabak operates inside Israel. They're the FBI. Mossad is the CIA equivalent operating outside Israel. It means that if you're a member of the Mossad and you're serving, you're in some other country. And you imagine you're undercover in Iran. You know, again, he said things and he didn't say things. Obviously, he can't say things and he's not going to say things, but just generally and generically talking about the risks and the selflessness and the. But here's my question. So Rabbi Moskowitz came into my office at one point for me to introduce him. We were just hanging and schmoozing. It's an amazing thing, by the way. Yossi Cohen, whose father was in the Etzel's grandfather was in the Haganah before the founding of the state. And he grew up religious, went to yeshiva, and he's still religious. He lives in Modi'in, around the corner, actually, from my sister. Goes to a different shul, he was telling me. But he's a religious person. And in the program, I asked him, did being Orthodox, observant, religious ever hold you back in the Mossad? Were you discriminated against because of it? Very interesting. Anyway, Rabbi Moskowitz came in, and I started to introduce him. And you know what he said? He said, is this your son? I said, you're the head of the Mossad. You're supposed to be perceptive, figure things out, know everything.
He just got fired from the Mossad.
Profile. So, it made me conclude, not that like, wow, he can't understand anything, but if the head of the Mossad thinks that, I officially look old. It's it. Head of the Mossad.
I was thinking about this. I don't know if there's an app out there, but there's going to be an app. It says, how old do I look? I wonder if there's a something like some AI.
They can guess how old you look.
Yeah. Wonder if they.
So we had a conversation last week about ChatGPT and AI. Didn't we have it on Behind the Bima? Did we talk about it?
I think a few weeks ago we were probably. I learned about AI from Behind the Bima. ChatGPT. So
you got to get out more. That's for sure. We talked about ChatGPT and its use, and then Skver Dai and the Skver Rebbe News Court came out and said, "Oh, sir, don't use it, don't touch it, don't look at it." Interesting. Why?
Yeah.
Are there benefits?
They didn't give a reason.
No, dangerous. Yeah.
I mean, just recently in a staff meeting, we needed a little intro letter to someone, and in 2 seconds we put something together. It just shows you. No, we didn't use it. I'm just saying. I don't think we used it. That's the danger. Shows you how real it looked.
We didn't use it, but it's powerful. Yeah. But it is also slanted and discriminatory, and it can, it's unfiltered. Our fact checker is telling me the Skver ban on AI is because it can't be controlled. It's unfiltered. Some think it's actually very biased with very left woke opinions. Mm-hmm. Basically, the people programming it can set, I guess, certain algorithms or certain preferences or certain biases, and so they came out against it. There's a lot of good for it. There's also a lot of danger in it. So I don't want to say it can go both ways, but interesting. And I get asked a lot, one day will we paskin with it? It's able to, it can collect everything that's out there and process it and give it back to you faster than a human being. So it's smarter than all human beings sort of combined. So will we one day be able to put a question in and it'll collect everywhere in the world and bring it back?
Have you ever asked it a Shiloh? Have you ever just to see what it would write back?
Yeah, there are people who've played with it. I've never touched it. I don't want to. I don't want to. I'm afraid of being drawn into it, of using it, sermons, eulogy. I don't even know. And it'll be too much of a distraction. I don't want to. I don't want to yet.
Interesting.
Well, but my answer is very simple. Sod Hashem li're'av, to process and paskin halacha, Jewish law, you're endowed with a certain divine wisdom, divine insight. God's on your side, and a computer can't sense things that a human being. There's a human component, human sensitivity, the human soul, human connection, and it can't process that. So,
well, I'll tell you one thing that AI can't do, and that's something you were very instrumental in and helped launch. And I'm very excited. I think tomorrow is the day we're going live on emails and social media and everything. It's right behind me. It's called Partners in Jewish Life. There's no AI here. It's people learning Torah together. That's it. We're going to launch it in Boca. God willing, there'll be other opportunities in other communities. We're going to get this going. But if there was actually, I have to send it to you. Someone just sent it to me. Ben Sion Twersky, Rabbi Ben Sion Twersky, just came out with this great schmooze on, I think it's on Torah Anytime. And it's all about how right now, before we get to Shavuos, how this is the time where we've got to spend that time, which we're investing so much into our own learning, but you got to give it to others.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
And that's right. Rabbi Kiva students were killed because they had a lot of Torah, but they couldn't connect over it. It was dividing instead of uniting. And we've got to unite 100%. So I wrote an article this week, got off my chest a feeling I had. Giannis, who is one of the all-star players in the NBA, star of the Milwaukee Bucks, at a press conference after the Bucks were eliminated by our Miami Heat in 5 games. So Milwaukee Bucks were number 1. I don't know if you're following any of this, Rabbi Broide, but I'm going to just share it.
Celtics tonight. It's live.
Are they playing? I have no idea. So Milwaukee Bucks, number 1 seed, best record in the NBA. Giannis, superstar, came in, the favorite by far. Miami Heat eked into the playoffs, really stumbled into the playoffs, barely got into the playoffs. And the Milwaukee Bucks were eliminated in 5 games, essentially almost swept. And the press conference, Giannis was asked, do you consider the season a failure? And he gave a very powerful, he's a very charismatic, and he's a real mensch apparently, and a great person, not just a great ball player. And he gave a great answer that really drew a lot of attention, went viral at large, but even also in the From Twitter world, social media. There's a Rebbe at a more yeshiva who showed it in Kla and Shir as a sort of Musar Shmooze, what he answered. And he basically answered, it's not a failure, You win, you lose. Life is a journey. There are all a lot of steps and different parts to it. And no, don't ask me if it's a failure. And everybody loved it and everybody celebrated it. And I wrote an article why I think he's wrong, why I think from influencers got it wrong, and why I think it's not just semantics, it's significant, it's important. If we can't name our failure, call it a failure, then you can't succeed. If you want to fail forward, you've got to call it a failure. So you're not a failure. I want to be very clear. Giannis is not a failure. His life's not a failure. His career is not a failure. Milwaukee Bucks are not a failure. But the season that you were supposed to get more than 1 game and be eliminated in the first round, the season's a failure. You were a favorite. And it's interesting. I posted the article. Anyone wants to read it, go to rabbiefremgoldberg.org. You can find it right there, rabbiefremgoldberg.org. And there's a big discussion online about the article, including classmates of mine from high school I haven't seen in probably 30 years that I had contact with. They're coming at me. There's a big debate. One is a professor, brilliant professor at, I think, a very prominent university. And he said, I applied for positions. I submitted papers. They were rejected. I never called it a failure. I was never felt it was a failure. That would have debilitated me. It's not a failure. So I said, let me ask you a question. You have kids in your class, students in your class. So what do you call it when they don't pass? What's the name? What's it called? Right? There's a grade. And if you don't get above it, what's that called? And we're having this big debate, this conversation, because to me, there's such a thing as a failure and a fail. And that's okay. It doesn't define you. It doesn't have to hold you back.
I mean, does F stand for failure? Like A, B, C, D?
Failure.
Like what does an A stand for?
F is a failure. So what's
Did we just say that, or that's what it really stands for?
No, I think that's what it stands for. I didn't get any, so I don't know. I'm not going to tell you I got much higher than that, but I didn't get any, so I can't tell you that.
Bring out the report cards.
I can tell you that, but having a failure doesn't define you, doesn't have to hold you back. In fact, it can propel you to be a better and best self and to success. But I think it starts by being able to say it's a failure. Yeah, I'm not a failure. The organization's not a failure. But you know what? This season was a failure. We owed more to the team and to the fans and to ownership. We're going to learn from it. We're going to practice. We're going to come back stronger. We're going to win more. You can't fail forward if you don't acknowledge and call it first a failure. And it's interesting to me, there's really this like outpouring of pushback to me.
Yeah.
And there's a general attitude today. We can't use the word failure, even accusing me that if a person feels like a failure, you're creating mental health problems because people feel. I disagree. I think that when you try to inoculate and protect and this trophy, right, participation trophy generation where we don't crown a champion, everyone who played gets a trophy. Like, why don't we eliminate test scores? It might happen. You're going to see it. We don't want anyone to fail. That would be too harsh, too painful. So let's eliminate testing and grades and scores. Because you tried, we put a smiley face on the top of every paper, and this is just a step in your journey, and you tried. So I'm open. I'm open to influence. I'm having this conversation. I'm learning. I acknowledge I actually changed my article. I edited it because I think you got to be open to influence and listen. And people pointed out to me, so I addressed that Giannis himself was born to immigrants in Greece. He grew up with poverty. He overcame so many obstacles against all odds, made the NBA as an NBA star. His life is the farthest thing from a failure. He's an enormous success. However, no one was talking about him. The question is not about him. The question was, is the team's season. And by the way, it's also relative, right? Because if you have a team that had injuries, barely had any good players, wasn't even supposed to make the playoffs, so that could be a success making the playoffs. Everything's relative. Just like you have a student. You have a student. Some students get a 66. You passed? Wow, unbelievable. Let's celebrate. That's amazing. But sometimes you have a student, you said, you got a 66? It's a failure for underachieving what you could have had.
The fact that FAU or even Fairleigh Dickinson, right? Didn't they both make it? That's no one expected them to be in those final games. It's a huge. And then why? I don't know if this happens in other sports, but in the Olympics, you have in track, you have bronze medals, you have silver medals. So when maybe just give out the gold. Why do you need a second and third place?
So why are we afraid? Why are we afraid to use the word failure? We're not a failure. Don't describe yourself as a failure. Whether you're a failure or not is determined by whether you learn from your failures. Right. 7 times a tzaddik falls and gets up. Sheva yipol tzaddik v'kam. You have to be willing to admit I fell down, and I'm going to get back up stronger, higher, faster. By the way, the fact checker just shared with me an article in the Wall Street Journal opinion, eliminate the bar exam for lawyers. An op-ed in the Wall Street Journal calling for eliminating the bar exam. It's mean. It's not nice. Some people fail. It's mean. Do you want to go to a doctor who failed his boards? Because it would be mean to say he failed. A lawyer who failed the bar. We're setting kids up for further pain, because if we pretend everyone's a champion, everyone's a valedictorian, everyone gets into every seminary and every yeshiva, and the answer to every shidduch is yes, there's life throws challenges your way. When you could say, I can embrace it, I can lean into it, I can fight through it, and I'll become better from it. That's when you're strong. But when we try to protect everybody and inoculate them.
Why is there salutatorian? Just make valedictorians.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Anyway, that's enough of that.
First of all, one thing that's guaranteed is Giannis is probably not coming on the show then, right?
Giannis is probably not. I actually debated because I was in touch with Myers throughout the playoffs, and we got together actually for breakfast when he was down here playing the Heat. And in fact, it was so sweet of him. I couldn't go, but my family had at the game and on the floor after the game. It was so sweet. So I was like, should I send the article to Myers? That maybe he'll share it with Giannis. I'm like, nah, I don't think that's necessary. I don't think that's necessary. Anyway, curious to hear your feedback on, can we use the word failure? Yeah. Do we use it? Can we use it? Should we use it? When do we use it? Would love to hear it. But for now, we turn to our dear friend, Rabbi Kalman Samuels, the founder of Shalva. I don't have to give a bio because in this conversation, you'll hear and learn all about him. Really, really special, really, really incredible person. And it's an honor and a privilege and a pleasure to be able to welcome him on. Behind the Bima with the great Rabbi Samuels. Rabbi Samuels, this is really long overdue. We've known you for so long, and our community has been connected and committed and invested in Shalva and have drawn from your energy and inspiration. So we're grateful to finally be going behind the Bima with you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Rabbi Goldberg. Thank you, Rabbi Broide.
It's great to be together. And there's so much to talk about: your life story, what led to the founding of Shalva, what's happening with Shalva, your view and your ability to inspire and help us in our love of others, unconditional love, and so many of the lessons of Shalva. But let's start with your golf game. Because we like to come from left field. We like to come from an angle people don't. And if someone were to look at Rabbi Kalman Samuels and knowing your achievements, accomplishments, seeing Kanai Nahara, that beautiful beard, which did not begin with Sphira, and know your scholarship and erudition, they wouldn't necessarily know that you're an accomplished golfer. When did that begin? Tell us the state of your golf game today.
You asked a question. Let me answer it in order. Let's not go to the sad part. Let's go to the first part. When did it start? It started at the age of 6 when you grow up non-religious in Vancouver, Canada, and you're an athlete. So you start learning golf when you're 6 years old, and you play. And in Vancouver, the sun set at about 9:45. So when we were young and teenagers, we had time to play 36 holes every day in the summer. And if you're a decent athlete and you play 36 holes every day, so you begin to play reasonable golf. So I was a 6 handicap when I left Vancouver at the age of 18, but I didn't play again for some 35 years.
Wow.
And at a Shalva event in Long Island, further out on Long Island, a guy came up to me and says, "Rabbi, I just heard you're a 6 handicap golfer, and quite frankly, I don't believe a word of it. Next time you're out, we're playing 18 holes of golf." So I said, "Well, you're a smart guy because you'll see on the first tee before I hit the ball if I was ever a golfer or not." And this guy, I laughed it off, and he didn't forget it. He kept pushing and pushing and pushing until finally someone said, "Kalman, for God's sakes, just go play with the guy." So I found a little golf course in Israel, and 5 consecutive Fridays I went out and tried to hit balls, and it was a lost cause. But slowly you get a rhythm. And I came out and played a magnificent course that you know is a wedding hall. It's the Castle out in Long Island, Coldstream Country Club.
Sure.
And it was a beautiful course. And I shot shots I didn't shoot for many years. I shot an 85. I pitched in from the rough, and these guys were in heaven. So I began to have games, and I chose my games, the nicest courses. And thank God I've had seen some wonderful courses in New York and elsewhere. But I haven't played in several years. I played a year ago. Now I'll hopefully play soon again. But it's just with the right person. In Israel, of course, you don't have many courses. You have one in Caesarea, and as nice as they think it is, it doesn't compare to some of the nicer courses you play in the upper, New York. But what can I tell you? It's a great thing. Forget about the golf. Golf, as they say, can only kill the beautiful outing of seeing nature.
Exactly. Golf is a good walk spoiled. I think the great sport writer John Feinstein wrote a book, like a good walk spoiled or something like that. Now, the truth is you and I have been trying to get out for golf for many, many years. We haven't yet. Golf is an amazing way to connect with nature. It's an amazing way to connect with people. Once upon a time, before the cell phone, it was a way to connect with people and nature without other distractions or influences, impediments. But golf is still a great metaphor for life. The notion of how to navigate and avoid the pitfalls, how to identify the obstructions, the sand trap and the water, and how to use great course management. How, if you have a bad hole that doesn't go the way you wanted, you could draw a line in the card and start again. And there's so many life lessons from golf, which really does connect now to your story about things not going exactly the way necessarily you wanted, for good and for bad, and learning the life skills to navigate and how do you strategically make your way through the course that we call life. So before we get to Shalva, and those who don't know, and if there's anyone left who doesn't know what Shalva is and does, and a magical, magical place. I know Rabbi Broide's been there, and I've been there, my family, really, really special. And Shalva is so intertwined with your identity and who you are. Before we get to that, tell us that journey. You mentioned that you grew up without observance, without Torah, without religion. What was the critical point in your life? What introduced you to an observant life and to moving to Israel and to the gift of Shalva?
Well, I grew up in Vancouver, Canada, which people in Boca might argue, but it's considered the nicest, most beautiful city in North America, pinned between the mountains and the ocean. And it's simply a lush, beautiful place to grow up. So I grew up, my name on my passport is still Kerry, Kerry Samuels, and I didn't grow up without religion. We grew up not being observant. My grandmother baked challahs Friday, my father made kiddush. We weren't halachically observant. So we went on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur to the shul. It was 4 miles away. We drove, but my father was from. He parked 3 blocks away. He didn't want to be one of the heathens who parked in the shul parking lot. And when you talk to a person who's sort of always been religious, they laugh at that. But for me, here it is many years later, that stuck. That respect, in spite of the fact you don't do everything, whatever you do has great value. So I had a bar mitzvah in an Orthodox synagogue, but again, we just weren't observant. Yeah. And we kept kosher at home, but there was nowhere to eat out. We didn't eat kosher outside. I'm very typical of out of communities. And when I was out of high school, I had a lot of opportunities. I had basketball scholarships to university, and I had academic scholarships. In my first year, I studied locally, and I wanted to be a professor of Western civilization. And for that, I was going to go to France, and I was on my way to France the summer of 1970. I was very much a child of the 60s. And my mother asked me to go to Israel for 2 weeks on the way to France and visit some distant relatives we had there. I'd never met, I'd never been to Israel before. And I did that and had a wonderful time, slept on the beach in Eilat, worked on a kibbutz in the far north, saw all the, the typical big sites. And what I did do was speak to an enormous number of people. And, they asked a lot of questions. And one of them was a guy that I'd never seen the likes of. He had a big beard, even larger than mine, with a mustache. What can I tell you? I guess I look like that guy today. And he had a big round black hat on. And when we spoke, he spoke perfect Australian English. I said, wait, there's something wrong. You can't speak Australian English. I mean, there's nobody in Australia that looks like you. And I didn't know there was anybody else in North America who looked like that. I figured, the rabbi has a little knitted yarmulke on the head and maybe a little bit of a beard. And that was the Orthodox rabbi at best. So we spoke, and he asked what I was going to be doing. And I said, I'm going to France in several days' time to follow my career. And he says, why in the world are you going to study somebody else's culture when you don't even know your own? I said, what are you talking about, Rabbi? I went to Sunday school. I went to Sunday school 3 times a week till I was 15. And then he had a little discussion if I'd ever heard of Talmud, of Mishnah. I had no idea what he was talking about. And I realized that, maybe there's something more here that I don't know. So I said, okay. So I took 6 weeks, and I said, I'm going to figure this out. And he had a program with 6 weeks with a lot of Ivy League guys there. And it was fabulous interaction. And I realized very quickly that, there is more here than I had understood. And I'm going to go till the end of the summer. And I did that. And at the end of the summer, my father, who was a lawyer, was very upset that I said, Dad, I'll never have this opportunity again. I'm going to take a year and really figure this out. And then I'm going to move on with my career. So by the end of that year, I had already become religious. And I decided that if I'm going to be interested in studying a culture, so I'll study, our culture, Jewish culture. So I pursued that and ultimately went for, smicha, very serious smicha. And I took that out in 1977 en route. I married my wife, Malki, and we had a beautiful daughter, a beautiful young son named Yossi. And Malki one day took Yossi for one of his vaccinations to the local public health center where you get the vaccinations in Israel. And unbeknown to us and unbeknown to the community at large, the Ministry of Health was having a problem with several batches of a particular vaccine, DPT vaccine, from June ultimately till December. It didn't come out till much later. And my son Yossi was, like hundreds of others, injured by that vaccine.
Wow.
And he became blind and deaf. When I say he became blind and deaf, I came home from my studies at 7:15 at night, and Malki was absolutely hysterical that Yossi's eyes were glassed over. He wasn't responding. He was 11 months old. He wasn't like a 2-month-old baby. And from there, it became a horrific saga of trying to find doctors, trying to find people who would speak to us because it was vaccine related. And ultimately, we could not get the medical information we needed in Israel. And my uncle happened to be the head of orthopedics at Maimonides Hospital in New York. And he said, come out to New York. I'll put you in contact with doctors who will talk to you. And the first neuro-ophthalmologist he put us in contact with, did the regular check as they did in Israel. The difference was he pushed away the little thing you look through. And he said, I'm so sorry to share that your son's optic nerve is atrophied, he says, which means it's pale, and he will never see again. So that was the first time we had finality that he's blind. And similarly with deafness, it took a bit more time, but he became deaf by the age of 3. So we were a young couple with a child that couldn't hear, couldn't see, struggling. We stayed in New York because we didn't want to go back to Israel at that time because they weren't speaking to us medically. And we stayed for 4.5 years. I went into the computer field. We lived in Brooklyn. And in Brooklyn, Malki occasionally had former teachers who would visit her and come see poor Malki with her difficult situation.
Rabbi Samuels, I'm going to interrupt you for 1 minute because I want to come back to and focus on this and the story of Yossi and the story of Shalva when you're back to Israel. But I just don't want to lose, because you said so many amazing things even to get to this point. And that's the real story. I mean, it's all the real story. But when you look back and reflect on your life, and how many have the opportunity to do so, you can pinpoint. You mentioned just two things. One was the rabbi who said, before you explore another heritage, explore your own. And look at Shalva today and the children and the families it's impacting. And when that rabbi, I don't know who he is or what's his name or if he's still among the living, but one day Hashem will welcome him and say, you created Shalva, Yesher Koach, it's amazing. And
You'll be
Hassan, what you're talking
surprised,
about.
Rabbi, you're hitting on a very important point. And there was even another person who made the rabbi's words had impact on me only because a year earlier or 6 months earlier, I was taking philosophy with a brilliant man named Dr. Rowan. He's no longer with us, not a Jewish fellow. And he used to mock all the people in 1970 going to India and going to China, and said that they have no clue and they have no yardstick with which to measure another culture. If you want to study a major civilization like India, like China, then learn for 4 years your own culture, your own civilization, Western civilization, and then you will have that yardstick. I, as an 18-year-old, bought into that, and that's what drove me that this is what I'm going to do. I want to have that yardstick. When the rabbi, subsequently, this guy teed it up, and when the rabbi said to me, my stomach was in knots. I said, am I nuts? I'm going to France. Am I going to let this guy tell me, but his words hit me very heavily, that this is Dr. Rowan's words, and this is what I so-called believe. You got to study your own culture first.
Right.
And it hit me that, guess what? My own culture is not Western civilization. It's Judaism, and Western civilization is, very much a part of where we live. So
you get the credit. You get the credit because you heard and it penetrated and it moved you. Like Mashmu Shama Yisra Uba. It's not enough to hear, but it penetrated and it moved you to make a pivot, an enormous change. They get the credit because, and I guess the reason that I'm emphasizing it is that our listeners, us, we never know what we say to who at what point in their life, that we then go on. We moved on from the conversation. It's done. It's in the rearview mirror for that person. We don't always necessarily see how it altered the trajectory of someone's life. And even, you go back to your father, because you said that story in passing, but it touched me very deeply, that your father, even parking a few blocks away, was making a statement that we have not institutionalized or celebrated our non-observance at this time. There's still a sense of reverence or awe. There's still a respect that we may not be observant for whatever reason, but we park 5 blocks away. And I think we're living in a time, in a generation, Vayivez Esav v'sabechora, that Esav doesn't just give up the bechora, he then goes to a bar and drinks that night. Even those who are not at a place and at a point and struggling with what they observe and what they keep, which all of us to some degree are, do we do it wholesale? Do we celebrate the rejection? Or do we still have some awe or reverence or respect that even if I'm not, I park 5 blocks away? So I love that story because I think it's a beautiful, and both, obviously, all three contributed to who you are today and to what you've built today. And you never know those stepping stones and building blocks of life.
No, Rabbi, I could not agree more. And I take great issue with people who are religious and have an all or nothing view. It's not all or nothing, because we may not have been doing certain things, but 99% of those people who are not doing it are usually people who are never religious and have no animosity. They just don't know enough to be obligated or do this, that, or the other, but their feelings are always reverent. And it's just a matter of, we just don't do that, but I really see that too much, where people don't understand what you just said, that the little bit and the words we say, the Beis HaLevi in the Parsha from Yaakov Avinu, in the story with Dinah, has a magnificent Torah in which he explains that at great length, precisely what you're saying, and that the object in life and in Judaism is always to do the right thing at the right time, at the right moment. That is the challenge, to try and do the right thing. What the results will be, he says, for sometimes we hurt people, and sometimes we say something that brings a person to do something that changes his life and other lives. We're not the measure of that. That can never be our measure. But we have no clue what we're impacting. And the key is, try and impact positively.
So you're in New York. Yossi has now been diagnosed as blind and as deaf. Here you've moved your life to become more observant and to not just not park 5 blocks away, but to keep Shabbos. You've taken this leap. You're studying Torah, smicha. You've adopted this religious life to Hashem, and this is the reward. Zu Torah v'zu schora. This is the payday. This is the payoff. Was there any point? This is a very personal question, and obviously you don't have to answer. Was there any point that your wife said, you know what, this is the reward for changing our life. This is the reward for moving to Israel, is that this challenge and this pain and this struggle, did religious life take a step back? Did you regress in this path of growth that you had taken?
The truth be told, and I say this quite honestly, no. We never had that problem. We didn't have a problem then. We did have a problem on numerous occasions, not from God, but from people. There were people who were dressed the religious dress and to the hilt, hurt and said and did things in a way that, like, oh my God, like we just, that was challenging. This, for whatever reason, we often hoped and prayed it was, going to go away the way it came. But neither of us in those had that particular problem. What did happen was that one of the very well-known rabbinit, the Rebbitzin from Jerusalem, visited my wife in New York, and my Malki was possibly 24, 25, and she was possibly 50, and she was, a well-known individual, and she came, and Malki had great respect for her, and she said to Malki that, listen, you can't live like this. You can't live a life in plastic. You can't put a vase on the table. You have to watch everything with a tea or hot tea. You have to watch your other children from Yossi. Yossi has to be watched from himself. And it's really not fair to your other children or to your husband. And you must find a setting outside the home to put this child. And Malki looked at her and said to her, Rebbitzin, I think you know how deeply I respect you and how many years I know you, but you do realize that you have a problem. And she says, what's my problem? She says, you don't believe in God. So, it's like telling Bill Gates, you're broke. What does she have if not her emunah? And she was in shock. Malki said to Rebbitzin, what are you telling me? All of life is from heaven. Everything is mina shamayim until something is inconvenient, at which time we take that inconvenience, we move it aside, and then we're back. Everything's from heaven. Everything's mina shamayim. Rebbitzin, I have news for you. This too is from God. This is for me, and I will never take him out of the house for the rest of my life. So they finished on reasonable terms, and she left. And Malki that night or a night later cried and said, God, I'm never taking Yossi out of the house. But if you ever decide to help my Yossi, I'm going to dedicate my life to helping other mothers with their children with disabilities. And, that was a nice promise, and I heard it on many occasions, but that's where it remained. And then ultimately, we went back to Israel 4.5 years later. Yossi was enrolled in the deaf school in Jerusalem. And a teacher who was deaf herself put one of his palms on the table, and in the other palm, she fingerspelled 5 symbols that someone invented many years ago. This is a shin, and a vav, and a lamed, and a chet, and a nun. And she did that for days on end. And at some point, Yossi lit up, and she had the smarts to know that this was his Helen Keller moment. This was the moment that he had a breakthrough to communication, to realize that the symbols in his hand was this table she was touching. And we didn't have a clue when she got so excited, but she was right. His life changed. And he learned the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. He learned to spell endless words, verbs, everything you can think of. And then on the basis of that, another amazing speech therapist, a young lady, decided she was going to teach him how to speak Hebrew. And she, over a 2-year period, taught him how to speak Hebrew synthetically. So now we had a child that we could talk to reasonably fast. He could speak, and he became very well known as the Helen Keller of Israel. And even before that, Malki sat me down in our apartment in Jerusalem and said, it's payback time. God delivered. I made a promise, and I know exactly what I want to do to help other mothers, and I need your help.
Did you challenge, did God deliver? Maybe God's delivery should have been he got his hearing back. He got his sight back. Again, just another remarkable part of the story is, even though it was a modest, from the perspective of someone who has their sight and hearing, it was a modest gift from above. She saw it as God delivering, so she needed to deliver.
You know what, Rabbi? We've never had that discussion. You're raising a very good issue. And, we'll have to consider it again. In the meantime.
No, I'm saying it's remarkable that even the modest gifts from above are God delivering. We shouldn't wait for it's all, like you said again, the all or nothing. God doesn't deliver exactly what we want, or he gave nothing. If he gives even modestly, it's a gift.
Rabbi, I do want to point out one thing. As someone who lived with a child with the inability to talk and communicate with your child for 7 years, the gift that God gave us was so enormous that it cannot be measured, because all of a sudden you have a child who he can express himself, and you'll see learn to express himself, and you can talk to him. I meet parents all the time with children who are unable to communicate, and my heart goes out to them, and I often go in a corner and cry, because I understand what it means not to be able to talk to your child, that most of us, thank God, take for granted.
Right.
But in this case, I hear what you're saying, but for us, the gift was absolutely overwhelming.
Got it. Makes sense. So she said it's time to pay back. And what happened next?
I was working full time. I had no clue how to do any of this stuff, and didn't have money apart from making a living. And it took years, and we wrote many foundations, and people said, write this one and write that one, and no one ever responded. And one day my own father was very ill in Vancouver, and I flew out to see him immediately. And I met in synagogue someone whose mother had passed away, and he was saying Kaddish. He wasn't a religious man, but he knew my parents. He was a very wealthy guy. And I got the guts up before I left. My father had a successful operation. And I got the guts up to ask him and share this, this little dream. And the funny part is, when I ran to Vancouver, it was very quick. My wife said to me, take that 3-page blurb in which we had worked very hard to describe the project for another foundation that didn't take an interest. And I said, who am I going to see in Vancouver? I'm just going to see my father. She says, you never know who you're going to meet. Take it. So I threw it in, and I got the guts up to show this to him the last day, a day before I left. I'll make a long story short. It is a long story, but he said he's going to help us out and give us $50,000 so that my wife can try and make her dream. And that was it. So I came back, and we thought overnight, what kind of name. We came to the word Shalva, meaning peace of mind. And we started from nothing, one after-school program, 5 kids in one rented duplex. And trust me, it was overwhelming. I continued to work for many, many years in the computer field, and Malki ran it. And it was, what can I say? It has become something of a different sort.
Were there other reasons perhaps those foundations didn't support the program? Did they say, well, there's other things like this already in Israel, or they just ignored it and it really took a friendship?
No, what I realized is, when you write a foundation and say, my wife has a wonderful idea, and we would ask you to help us, found this thing. I mean, there's better, more trusted investments. There's a lot of young ladies, I'm sure, who want to do things. And, it's like, I understand where they're coming from, but no one ever got that far in the process.
Mm-hmm. Fast forward to today. Rabbi Broide, you've been to Shalva. Describe what it's like at Shalva.
I tell you, when you think about a place like this and you think, okay, there's probably an office with a few rooms that you can walk into and you'll see some things taking place. And you see this multi-million dollar campus, which is massive. And there's so much going on, everything from cafes, and you'll hear about the cafes, to the pools, to the different places where you can do all these different activities. It is massive. It's like Disney World for a whole population that really has nowhere else to be.
So Rabbi Samuels described today, and that was my experience too, and the chachma, the wisdom of the design of every single space, from when you walk in the lobby and what greets you, to the respite rooms where people stay over. It's just done with such brilliance. What's happening at Shalva today? What kind of children and how many children and families does it serve, and in what ways?
Shalva is serving much more than children. Shalva is serving 1,000 people from birth to old age today. We have it's from mothers who just gave birth to a baby with a problem, and mommy's blown out of the water. And we have a program for them called Me and My Mommy. We have a daycare for 1 to 3 year olds. We have preschools from 4 to 6. We have typical preschools alongside our regular preschools, so that there's 60 or 70 kids who are absolutely healthy, and their mothers break down the walls to register their kids in our preschools, because their kids are going to get a very different experience. And then it goes to the original program was the after school program, which is a bridge. And what Malki wanted to do is, rather than a child with a disability come home from government paid schools at 2 or 3, she wanted them to come to our center, and the center will be a bridge till 6 p.m. and a hot meal, so that mommy and daddy can actually work and make a living, and the siblings are not burdened with their brother or sister who has a challenge. And when he comes home at 6:15 happy, the family has a shot at a quality life. And this is not once a week, but this is every day of the work week. And you mentioned respite. Every night we have scores of the after school program sleeping over. So each night it's a different group. So today is Monday. Johnny went to school that the government pays for on Monday morning. He doesn't see his parents again until Tuesday night. And the parents have 2 days and a night to just do whatever they want. Go to a movie, go to a shiur, sit down and relax with their kids, whatever it is. Go to a doctor one of those 2 days. It's just they have time to function, and it adds an enormous break in the pressure. And we have almost every Shabbat of the year, we have 60 or 70 kids from 6 all the way up at Shalva for Shabbat, with a similar number of staff and volunteers. And then we go to adults, and we have vocational training for young adults. We place them, we train them. We have some 25 working in various capacities at Shalva. And in the last 5 years, we went into the field of inclusive living in the community, and we're opening up our 11th and our 12th apartment. 6 of those are for young ladies who are 6 in an apartment, and 6 are for young men. And they're of a quality that nobody has seen. It's just a totally different quality of care and facilities. And so we're now serving the entire cycle of life, and we service the entire community, first come, first serve.
Extraordinary what you built.
Amazing. Are there people that look at you and they say, well, I'm a little concerned. It's a rabbi running it, and they see the long white beard, and they say, I don't know if this is for me, and yet it's for everyone. How do you deal with that?
I've never had the problem with people looking at me and saying it's a rabbi. I've had the reverse problem in the early days, when people who are Orthodox saying, 1 minute, but you're going to include in this program people who are not Orthodox. How's my kid going to fit in with him? Wow. And the answer we gave them is, he doesn't have to. If you don't want to come, you don't have to come. But if you're coming, it's for everybody. First come, first serve. And believe me, I don't recall any problems in the last 30 years.
What are misconceptions or stereotypes people have about those with disabilities? We had on our program Chava Willig Levi Aleh Shalom, who just passed away on Pesach. She was a remarkable
woman. I'm so sorry
woman.
to hear that. I was unaware.
Yeah, she was an extraordinary woman, and she had polio. She was in a wheelchair, but that didn't define her. And when we had this conversation, we had a robust conversation. Really, we were listening and learning. It was not a debate in the least. But is it more appropriate to call disability, handicap, different ability? And in the age of political correctness, there is some real focus. Do you have any opinion on that? The use of the word disability, handicap, different ability. What are some misconceptions or stereotypes people have, having your own son, but also living in a world that you've built? The Shalva is a world unto itself of it, in terms of people's sensitivity to this issue.
Look, political correctness, as you know, can go to the extreme, and I don't think we have to worry about the extremes. What the key to all of the political correctness is, that we're not talking about a half a child. We're talking about a whole person with a particular problem. Therefore, they don't want to use the term a handicapped child, which indicates a partial child. It is a child with a handicap. The word handicap has gone out of vogue, although it's still used, and it's a disability. And from there, people go, they don't want to use the word disability, so they say different abilities. I mean, everyone will go in his direction to try and, work in that direction. But at the end of the day, you can't always win. Whatever you say, people may find fault with you. But I think the basis is very simply, it's a full person, an individual with his personality. Some people are 6'6", some people are 5'2". Somebody has an IQ of 150, somebody has an IQ of 85 or 90. Everyone has their abilities. And, we look at them as people, and we may understand that this person will not be an athlete. This person may not be a university professor. But as you said the words very well, this does not define them. We have a mother who actually, she was in the pool in Shalva with her baby. And I saw this in the video. And when I first saw it, and every time I see it, it brings tears to my eyes. And you see a mother with her baby, and she says, after being in the pool, she says that my daughter is beautiful. My daughter is gorgeous. My daughter is stunning. And she has Down syndrome. In other words, she came to the realization that her daughter's Down syndrome is not defining her own daughter. This is a serious problem of bringing a young, new mother to understand that this is her baby. It's very hard to connect sometimes. And I'm told that there's a lot of magic in the therapy pool when the mothers are with young babies, where they suddenly realize this is my baby, and they explode with emotion.
Wow. Right. Rabbi, you said they might not become a university professor or maybe a pro athlete, but they could become a musician. And the Shalva band is one of those incredible lessons where a few people got together and it became a worldwide phenomenon. What's the latest with the Shalva band?
Today, this evening, as we're talking, they are in Geneva playing for the United Nations before 800 people. It's a very, very big, appearance over there. And next week, they will be on Tuesday playing in Cleveland, Ohio at their big concert hall. They will be in Toronto. They will be on Motzi Shabbat on Saturday night. They're in Washington, D.C., playing in a big concert hall. And then they're playing one more place I can't even remember, and then they'll be coming home. So the band, it's like, for us, it's just one more program. Right. I mean, I say that understanding that it's a bit different, but our goal in every situation is trying to help a child develop his capabilities, whatever they may be. Some have art, some have something else. In the case of music, we set this up in 2005, a young music therapist and myself, and he wanted to create a band. And I said, great, let's go. So he started, and believe me, it was a little in-house band. Right. But over the years, it picked up, and it went out of house, and it went to events for people with disabilities. And it got to the point where someone said, let's make an international tour. And there was a lot of skeptics, and they did. And they went to the States and Canada, Mexico, Russia, England. And the Israeli version of America Has Talent got wind of them. And they invited them for an audition. And they auditioned, and they said, please come, and perform. And quite frankly, we thought maybe they'll make it through the first round, and that would be amazing. But I had a conversation with them in the Shalva Cafe the night before, and I said to them, don't worry. The very fact that you're on that stage is a huge matter of impact. And, whatever it is, it is. As it turned out, they went straight to the finals after about 12 things. And when they got to the finals, the person who wins this contest represents Israel in what's called Eurovision. And many people in the States don't know that Eurovision is the largest musical contest in the world, 42 European countries and Australia, and 200 million people watch this. And there's the semifinals, and then there's the finals. And Eurovision got back to the television station here in Israel that there would be the competition would be Saturday night, but there would be a dress rehearsal on Friday night. And that was mandatory. So everybody in Israel got involved, trying to make it a little bit earlier. And the Shabbos was coming in at 8 o'clock. Let's do it. They'll be in a hotel nearby. They'll do it at 7:30. But they said, sorry, it doesn't work that way. We have to have a complete dress rehearsal. So the band was unable to compete, and they made their own decision. And this was headline news in Israel. I mean, on headline news in Hebrew, will the band go? Will the band stay? When we withdrew, we never mentioned the word Shabbos. We said we respectfully withdraw from the competition, and we thank everybody. The way we did it made huge waves in Israel with people who are generally not in favor of Shabbat and very on the left, saying this is the way a person can stand up for his principles. You don't have to rub it in the other person's face. So Eurovision liked the way we left, I think, and they invited them to be not contestants, but guest artists on the Thursday night semifinals. So they were, and they sang a song called A Million Dreams from The Greatest Showman, and it went viral and it went worldwide.
Tell us about the band, the musicians. What makes it different, Shalva's band?
The band is composed of, today it's a little bit different because the kids have grown up and they become professionals in their own right. And it's a very, it's a different kind of band in the sense that they're like 23, 24, 25 years old and they're making a living. It's not Shalva kids anymore. But the original band, as in 2019, when it was in Eurovision, was comprised of 8 musicians. The drummer has something called Williams syndrome. And it's a syndrome that sometimes has a component of great musical ability, and he has it. He's just phenomenal. The 2 lead singers are both blind. The one is a French girl from birth, and the other is an Indian girl who lost her vision in India at the age of 6. And they made Aliyah when she was possibly 10 or 12, or maybe a bit older. So these are the 2 lead singers. And the percussion guys were 2 Down syndrome guys, young men. And the band leader is a guy who survived a brutal attack. He was in Duvdevan, like Fauda, and his commander was killed and he was severely injured. And when I met him in 2005, he was a year and a quarter after the injury, and he had to learn to walk again, to talk again. I mean, it was a very long thing. And this was why I hired him, because I saw he had some problems. I said, Shai, this is what you want to do. You're a hero of Israel. Just do it. And the keyboard person was a guy who didn't wear big glasses or anything, but he was a brilliant musician, a trained musician. And he was blind in one eye and had 20% vision in the other. And ultimately, he lost, sadly, that 20% that he could no longer continue. But this was long after Eurovision. So that was the band. The vocalists are phenomenal. And, it's just something that's captivated people. People do not expect this level of musicality. They think they're going to come in here. Let's hear a band with kids with disabilities. We'll listen carefully. And all of a sudden, they blow them away at a level that this is what the judges said too. It's like people think we're giving them favorable remarks because they're with disabilities. It has nothing to do with it. They're simply the best in the competition. So, that's the band. And they continue today. And they're a professional lot, and they make their living. They work very hard. And they continue. For example, all the various UJAs were just in Israel now for, Yom Ha'atzmaut, Independence Day. And a group of them, I think Miami, took out the Caesarea huge amphitheater that has like 4,000 or 5,000 people. And one of the key, stars of that night was, of course, the Shalva band.
Wow.
So it's an amazing group of young people.
There are a lot of volunteers who come to Shalva. You've got Shirut Leumi, and you've got Americans in Israel for their year who volunteer. Have you seen the volunteers but one who signs up to volunteer supposedly is giving to the other? How much have you seen the volunteers themselves gain? Have you seen particularly American young people who may have grown up certain privileges or certain assumptions or entitlements in life, volunteering in Shalva, in general, that volunteering atmosphere in Israel with others? Have you seen, instead of only their giving, what they've gotten?
I would say very candidly that over and above what we do with people with disabilities, we are raising a generation of young men and young women whose lives are impacted in the greatest possible way. And you'll see prima donnas that have never lifted anything in their lives in the pool with a girl or a boy, and whichever it is, with severe disabilities, that it's like mind-boggling their parents could never imagine what they could do and what they do with a person with disabilities. And I must say, the Or Chaim talks about Cain and Hevel. And he says over there, when Hashem says to Cain, he says, "What's your problem?" And he tells him what his problem is. He says, "Im teitiv se'et." If you will do good to another, you will, the Or Chaim says, it's mitromem. It will pick you up. He says there's a mechanism when one does a chesed for somebody else, his spirit is automatically picked up. And this is what we see. It becomes like a drug. And it's not only at Shalva, it's wherever there are situations like this, whether it's a camp, disabilities, people who get involved, it's like, they can't get enough of it. And they truly are changed people, and they will take these changes with them in life. It doesn't make a difference what they will ultimately be doing. They have become changed people. The impact is astounding.
People ask me often what to look for in shidduchim, in matchmaking. If you could introduce your child to somebody who volunteered, who worked at Shalva or Hask or Simcha or Yachad, you know what kind of mother or father they'll be. That selflessness, that devotion, that giving, that nature, that energy, it's extraordinary. It's amazing to see.
Without a doubt. And it often comes natural, and often the kids have not had that experience yet. And whenever they have it, wherever they have it, it's a gift. It's truly, truly a gift that, as you say, they will take it with them.
And this might be a setup, but any shidduchim come out of those volunteers?
We have a wall at Shalva. It's called the Wall of Hearts, one floor up near the cafeteria. And on that wall, we have like 45 names on the wall, but etched into the wall. And those are 45 young couples who, as the sign on the wall says, these are young people who came to give love, and love is what they found. And it's people of like minds, and there's about 10 more that are not yet up on the wall. But yes, it's an ongoing process every year where young people meet each other and they get married.
Rabbi Samuels, help close us out. People watching the news from America or from outside of Israel see a lot of the rallies, demonstrations, a lot of the heated debate surrounding the judicial reform. They see a lot of division, a lot of splintering, and a lot to be pessimistic about. As Israel just celebrated its 75th anniversary, give us something positive. What gives you optimism and hope? What's a positive, as you just celebrated this remarkable 75th anniversary, this modern miracle that is the state of Israel, Shalva, part of its young story. Give us something positive about Israel.
I think at the end of the day, that what we're seeing is obviously greatly, greatly disturbing. And it's a division that we haven't seen the likes of in, I don't know when, and no one quite knows how it's going to end. But my sincere hope is that people are going to come down. People realize that there's no winners here. There are no winners. If one side wins, it's not that they won, it's that everybody loses. There's going to have to be a give and take. And as the president said so brilliantly, not the president, I heard it from Benny Gantz, that when we talk about being yachad, together, it's not about me and you getting together and I'll get this and you'll get that. He says, no, it's about me understanding that in spite of the fact that I believe it should be this way, I am going to give up something very dear to me, and you are going to give up something very dear to me, and we will be able to live yachad. So I sincerely feel, and I'm not alone in this feeling, that people are going to come to their senses and realize that it cannot be, as we said, all or nothing, and everybody is going to have to not have the whole package, and we'll find a way to make it work. We've been here before with some very difficult arguments in this history of Israel. I think it's the nature of our people to be passionate about what we believe. And I sincerely feel, and not just said, but I, amongst many others, feel it's going to work out. It might take a couple of months, might be a few, problems in the meantime, but God willing, it's going to be okay.
Amen. Amen. And we'll leave it on that bracha. Rabbi Samuels, thank you for your time. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for your leadership and your vision. Thank you for your friendship. And please, God, we will one day spend some time on the golf course together, enjoying each other's company further. So thank you for letting us go behind
until that time, when you're back in Israel, lunch is on me.
We look forward. Thank you so very much. Rabbi Broide.
Wow.
Lunch is on him. Lunch is on him. What are you ordering?
I don't know. We'll see. First of all, he's got a great cafe, and everyone there is just, you're being served by people that actually work there, and it's a great place to be.
Very, very special place.
Yeah.
Very special place.
Golf? Had no idea.
Have you ever played golf?
I play. I was going to ask him when he was talking about golf. Was he talking about the, what do you call it, pitch and putt, or what's the name of the game?
Real deal. He's the real deal, Broide.
He knows what he's doing.
He's the real
miniature
deal.
golf.
Miniature.
Yeah, that's what I like to do. That fits, right?
I'm not allowed. I was about to say most things you do miniature, but then I get emails that I'm not nice. I'm not modeling being. No, they don't know that you like that. You enjoy that. You ask for that. But I don't do it. I'm not doing it.
I'm a pretty good miniature golf player.
It's good to know.
Let's leave it there.
It's good to know. I won't touch that. Another great conversation. Shalva, what a story. What a story of faith. What a story of journey towards an observant life. What a story of taking your own pain and trying to use it to relieve the pain of other people in a huge way. It's special. Really
I was
special.
wondering, he was so affected by vaccines. I mean, again, it's very personal. I was wondering about Corona and all the vaccines, like PTSD.
Yeah, I regret not asking, although you can't have regrets. Everything's from Hashem.
Right.
But a follow-up that said that inform your attitude towards vaccines now.
Right.
Now, everyone, the biggest proponent of vaccines would tell you that there are people injured by them. Everybody knows that.
Right.
And I have had this conversation with him, and he certainly endorses vaccines. And again, whether it's a fluke or there's a statistical group or everything's from Hashem, but he still embraces it. But that would have been a follow-up question. Interesting follow-up question.
It's amazing.
Would have been.
Seems
So
like
what?
Seems like just yesterday we were online getting those vaccines.
Yes,
those
remember
boosters.
that?
Remember how hard it was to get the first ones? It's crazy how things have changed.
Yeah, my parents had to drive like 2 hours each way to go get it.
Remember, we were sitting next to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. I was making an exciting video today for something in front of the shul. I was standing in front of the shul, and it's been beautiful weather the last couple of days, but it got hot. And all of a sudden I was transported back to wearing a mask and spooning out cholent as people drove by.
That? Yeah.
You just think about the crazy things we did, which was based on the best knowledge we had at the time. But we were spooning out. People were in their car. We were outdoors. We were far away. We wore a mask. It was 1 billion degrees. We did the best that we could. I just got a text from one of our biggest fans saying, Rabbi Brody's teeth look so white. So kudos to you.
They're real.
They look good. What's your secret?
I tell you, I go for cleaning every 6 months, but now I just signed up for every 3 months. That's my new thing. That's it. Got to keep them clean.
They do look very white. Maybe it's the contrast of your incredible tan.
Yeah. Just this light. Shut the light down.
Yeah.
How'd your video shoot
look pale and just ask the head of the Mossad.
How'd that video shoot go? Something big
let me ask you this.
going on? Yeah.
What are the odds that he didn't plant some listening device in this office right now?
Oh, that's great.
Well, if you were going to listen somewhere, my office is probably not it.
Just think about it. I might do that. Plant a listening device.
So you took a social media fast. You didn't post anything or watch or consume social media for 3-4 years.
Yeah.
And then
just
you came back. What was the thinking? Why'd you take the break? Why are you back?
So I'll tell you, there's really only one thing. It's really just Torah. It's Torah and learning bechavrusa. But I figured instead of just launching this program and going, all in on something, I don't know how the algorithms work. So in my own crazy mind, I say, you know what? I got to build up a presence again, because maybe it'll rank higher on people's feeds if they see that I'm already there. So posted a few updates about the family, but hopefully tomorrow you're going to see something really exciting. And again, it's a long time coming. I'm going all in on something. We're at 10.2 right now on this. Rabbi Goldberg knows what that means. And
there's nothing more exciting and nothing better than when Rabbi Broide goes all in. When he wants to blast something out of the world, there's no one better.
Beware,
no one better, nothing more exciting.
It's coming to a city near you, and starting in Boca.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing.
Very
Rabbi Broide,
exciting.
another great conversation, another great guest, another great sponsor. I want to thank our friends at I was supposed to have a baby.org. I was supposed to have a baby.org. May 7th, Sunday, Zoom, confidential, able to really benefit from the 15 major fertility organizations, prominent voices, learn sensitivity. Don't forget, don't ask, how many kids do you have? Do you have kids? Why don't you have kids? Say, tell me about your family. Tell me about your family. We can all be much more sensitive, and there's a lot to learn. And hopefully we daven all those who are waiting and longing to have children should have their dreams realized, including, by the way, I've also learned, as we've emphasized fertility, sensitivity, before Kol Na'arim, we offer special tefillah. I've had some older single people say, people struggling with fertility, at least they have each other. It's horrible. It's unbearably painful. They have someone. I'm single. I don't have anyone else, and I don't have children.
Right.
So that taught me a lot. That gave me a big sensitivity. So every time we talk or think about these things, I say, Hashem should answer everybody's tefillos for the good. Everyone should have their dreams realized and fulfilled. It should all be good. It should all be good, which is amazing. Amazing. One of our listeners wants to know, why is Rabbi Broide flipping out at 48 years old?
Flipping out.
You
You mean like yeshiva? You're going back?
Yeah. Remember
back
that
in the
song?
day?
I'm flipping out.
Yeah. Blue
We had
Fringe.
them here. What was that band?
Blue Fringe.
Blue Fringe. Do you
Yeah.
remember the famous Blue Fringe concert?
We should bring them back. We should bring them back on the
What
show.
year? Can you name the year?
2001, 2002.
I think 2001, 2002.
Yeah.
Community was going through something, a rut. Still
It was
remember
just the
some money
greatest.
was
It
put
was just a
together,
feel
brought
good.
them in. It was a feel good.
It was great because you had teenagers that loved it, and then you had those people back then, like
Yeah.
in their 30s and 40s, and even some of the older folks. They were rocking out.
So
Yeah.
it's not, you're never too late in life to flip out.
You never
I'm not
are.
saying you need to flip out, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying you've gotten very into learning. You've gotten very into.
You know what it is, and again, I'm still trying to figure all this out. But there's I think maybe two things. We sometimes think we don't have enough time, and then obviously it's like you've told these stories many times that you just start making some time and you realize you have more time than you need. But it starts getting very enjoyable. Like you're learning one thing, and then you start another thing, and you try to keep up both, and maybe you add something else. And it's like one thing just feeds off the other.
Right.
I'll just give you an example. They just started again, this Rambam, right? For the
Yeah.
cycle, Chabad's doing the Rambam
Right.
parak a day. And the first few days, or really the first week, it's just going through the list of the mitzvahs lo saseh and mitzvahs aseh, all the positive, negative commandments. And I don't think I've ever listed them I've never seen all of them. And you're like, I think I'm doing some of those. And
I love how excited. Every time I
it's
see you now, you got a sefer in your hand. You're reading, you're learning, you're telling me over this amazing Dvar Torah. But it's amazing.
Oh, it was great.
It's contagious. It's great. There's no better time counting up to
feels good.
Shavuos. This is it.
That's right.
This is the time.
And there's no better way to do it than with a chavrusa. You can do it yourself, but you can also teach someone else. So that's even more exciting.
And people can hear more about that. Where are they going to hear more about that?
It's going to be at pjl.org. We got the website. Wasn't cheap, but we're going all in.
pjl.org.
PJL, our buddy Stephen Plotzker is working on that right now.
That's great.
And you can see already a sign up for our website.
I love it.
it's
Well,
very
you can
exciting.
find the article about failure at RabbiEfremGoldberg.org. You can find Rabbi Broide's incredible program coming out on all of his now revived
We're back in.
social media pages.
Oh, beware.
We got some great guests coming up and lined up, which we're really excited about. And
Maybe you could have a chavrusa with Giannis. We'll invite him. It's all
maybe.
about coming in with the opposite, right? That's the whole idea.
Yeah.
Not with one of your buddies. But,
You complement each other. That's
yeah.
right. Disagree agreeably. Debate
exactly.
respectfully. It's a beautiful thing.
Can't wait.
Rabbi Broide, always a pleasure. I thank you. And until next time, stay happy, stay healthy, and stay holy.